Welcome to the Pump Take Sports Show. Today, we are going to be talking about kind of an interesting team in the NBA, especially more interesting since they drafted LaMelo Ball, and that's the Charlotte Hornets. There's obviously a few things to talk about here. The draft pick, LaMelo Ball, the massive Gordon Hayward contract, and apparently, according to Trending NBA, the Hornets have prioritized making a push to the playoffs after huge offseason moves. They look to move forward and trade for Andre Drummond, a trade that can involve Terry Rozier and multiple picks. So obviously, that raises some questions. Why are the Hornets trying to push for the playoffs? Why are the Hornets not just trying to rebuild? And I guess that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'll open it up to the floor, I guess, to start with the LaMelo Ball pick. Even though we covered it, check out our draft picks video. We talk about LaMelo Ball more in depth. But still, LaMelo Ball, anyone want to take it away?
Sure, I'll take it away. I obviously, as we mentioned in the video, I like the LaMelo Ball pick a lot. I think he's a good fit for that team. But I think the rest of the stuff that they're doing doesn't really align with the LaMelo Ball pick. I mean, obviously, the Hornets aren't, strong really at any position in particular. Like they could use a good center like Andre Drummond. They could also use a good forward like Gordon Hayward. But those guys aren't young. Also, those guys aren't people that are like, oh yeah, that was good value for that player, which we'll talk about when we discuss Gordon Hayward. But I think if you're like trying to be young, like Devontae Graham, up and coming player, has a lot of potential. Well, not even a lot. Like we've seen his potential, right? And he's young; he can definitely develop. And then same with Ball. Obviously, has a bunch of potential that or maybe not. We haven't seen yet. But I think signing Gordon Hayward to this ginormous contract, which we'll talk about, and then also, possibly signing Drummond, like I think that team's not actually that bad. I think it could maybe make the playoffs, but in that stacked Western Conference, I think if I was the Hornets GM, I would be trying to rebuild. Not that I know anything about being a GM or that I would be a better GM than the Hornets GM, but I'm just, I think I'd rebuild.
The Hornets are in the East, but still, like the general premise stands. Like I obviously, if you're a team like Charlotte, like you should be striving to make the playoffs every year. Like that's just what small market teams should be doing. You should be trying to push for that 7-8 seed. But like, I don't see how this Hornets team really like pushes themselves into the 8th seed with like the roster moves that they've made. Last season, albeit the season finished very, very shortly, and did the Hornets even get invited to the bubble? I don't think they did. They did. Yeah. The Hornets last season finished 10 games out of the 8th seed. So, like, I guess the question you have to ask yourself, and as you said before, they're trying to make moves to make up more of this difference, but is adding, like, rookie LaMelo Ball and Gordon Hayward, who's been a shell of his former self since Utah, really the difference between 23 and 33 wins? And then when you add to that, teams like the Hawks have gotten better. The Bulls have a fresh start, new head coach, high draft picks. The Wizards have made a couple of moves as well. The Cavs are going to start to get older and a little more experienced. I don't think that a team like the Hornets really has much of a chance with the acquisitions they've made to move up more than 10 games that it would take to make the 8th seed from their performance last year.
And the problem is, it's not that they're trying to make the playoff. Like every team should be trying to make the playoffs, but they're overspending unnecessarily to make the playoffs. Like, do you need to pay Gordon Hayward that amount of money to try and make up for that difference in not being a playoff team to being a playoff team? Like, why not draft LaMelo Ball? You have PJ Washington, who's kind of a promising player. He showed some stuff last year. You still have Terry Rozier as a 6th man. You have Devontae Graham. You've got some pieces that can like kind of be young and work around LaMelo Ball and see how it goes. And then from there, if you're bad, which you were going to be anyway, you have a higher pick to then draft another good player to surround LaMelo Ball with more talent instead of clogging up your cap situation with Gordon Hayward.
Absolutely hit the nail on the head. I think this is just a classic, just like pitfall that bad organizations fall into, where they overplay mediocre players as just a kind of a desperation push to be somewhat competitive. And like, let me preface this by saying that I don't think Gordon Hayward is a bad basketball player. On the Celtics, he was a great piece of their organization, but that's what he was. He was a piece to a competitive team that had much, much more around him, and like guys like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kemba Walker, and just other good depth players. The Charlotte Hornets are not that. They're an organization that's signing a player who used to be and I sound like I'm ripping on Gordon Hayward here. That's not what I'm trying to do. But Gordon Hayward had one season as an all-star on the Jazz like 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
I think it was
and
like 2015.
A lot of bad injuries as well that have kind of held them back from doing anything. And also, like, okay, if we're going to try and look at the Hayward signing in a positive light, it does alleviate some scoring pressure from LaMelo Ball, which is a good thing, right? Like, you would slot Hayward in at small forward, and then your lineup would probably be Ball, Graham, Hayward, PJ Washington, Zeller. Like, who's their starting?
They re-signed Bismack Biyombo. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know
with
if
Cody
he'd come off the bench, but or start. But regardless, like, I mean, I guess that's why they're pushing for Andre Drummond, according to Trending NBA. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's what they're trying to do, right? They're trying to take a little bit of pressure off. I'm not saying this is a good signing. I don't really love it, but they're trying to take a little pressure off LaMelo Ball, a little pressure off PJ Washington to let those players kind of, I guess, spread their wings a little bit with a little bit less, I guess, pressure, as I've said like 4 times. But yeah, I mean, the problem is Gordon Hayward good enough to alleviate that? And that's a question and I like Gordon Hayward, as you were saying, Kel. I'm not trying to shit talk Gordon Hayward, but $120 million for 4 years, like that's $40 million more than Fred VanVleet's making on the Raptors. Yeah. And I guess, I mean, I don't even fully. Oh, and the Hornets waived Batum's thing to like a crazy extended salary thing, which like completely clogs up their salary situation for a while to try and get out of that Batum contract. So, like,
I was just going to bring that up, Jake. Like, teams, a lot of times teams fall into this trap of signing a player that once had a good season. Or like Harrison Barnes is another good example of that. He's getting vastly overpaid as well because he had that season where he looked like, you know, a value market Kevin Durant. Like, he looked like Brandon Ingram or something out there. And then, you know, he was just extremely overpaid. So I think it's important for teams to not fall trapped to that. And Kale, like I agree. Like you like what you were saying when I brought up the point about how I'm not really sure what they're doing. Like, are they trying to push for the playoffs? Maybe they should just rebuild. Like, I like what you said, where if you are a small market team, you should be pushing for the playoffs. But I guess what I was trying to get across is that I don't know if like these guys are the right players, and especially signing Hayward to like a 4-year, 120 million. Feel like that's crazy. You're not investing in a player for a couple years. Like, for example, Hassan Whiteside was just signed to a 1-year deal with the Kings, and the Kings you could kind of compare them to the Hornets in the sense where it's like you don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but I mean, if they surprise you, they could. But at least they signed him for a 1-year deal. Gordon Hayward, 4-year deal. And another thing there, so this is kind of funny, but there's only 3 players in NBA history that have ever been signed to 30 million like per year deals twice. And those players are LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and now Gordon Hayward. So I mean, it's like, come on, does he really? And then, does LeBron deserve to be there with Durant, Gordon Hayward? No, I'm obviously joking, but like, come on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Hornets are very not lucky, because I guess they thought about this a little bit, but they are lucky that with this Hayward contract, they don't have to actually extend LaMelo Ball, given that he works out very well for them. They don't actually have to do that for a few more years. So hopefully they can kind of clean up this mess. If you're a hopeful Hornets fan, you hope LaMelo Ball's great, PJ Washington continues to excel, and Devontae Graham can perfectly fit in, and then you hope Rozier isn't a complainer and can come off the bench and play well for you, and then can move forward and kind of clean up your cap mess later when you actually have to pay some of these young guys that you have. But overall, unless you guys have anything else to add about the Hornets, I mean,
I just have one more thing that kind of builds on Marco's point. When I was saying earlier about that small market teams should push for the playoffs, I think there's a key difference in 2 different ways that teams tend to do that. what we're seeing with the Hornets is that they're pushing for that 8th seed by signing guys like even the Terry Rozier contract like last offseason. Like they signed Terry Rozier to like a pretty big deal. And now they've done the exact same thing with Gordon Hayward, but those two guys aren't guys that are going to like push you over the edge.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the way that like these small market teams need to go for the playoffs is, one, you need to draft well, you need to build through the draft.
Like the
Do what
Bucks
the Pistons are doing.
or the
Yes.
Pistons.
Do
the
what the
Bucks.
Pistons are doing.
Yeah.
It's going to take time, but they're going to be a better team at the end of it.
Check out
And
our
I think that like in free agency, instead of just going for these sort of like big name signings that are going to cost you a lot of money, you should be going for just like these like lower risk, high reward guys who are kind of young and have been let go by their former teams but still have potential. You can get those guys on longer contracts for very cheap deals, and then you need to try to develop them internally and push to become a better team that way.
I
And
totally
I think that's
agree.
just how you like. That's how you, as a small market team, should build internal talent and manage your salary cap at the same time, instead of going after the like bigger name players that you're just somebody's going to overpay them, and you shouldn't be that.
I 100% agree.
Yeah, and what's even the point in, like, you're not even going to win a playoff series anyway. So what is Gordon Hayward's contract getting you the 8th seed in a perfect world even really?
Yeah.
Hopefully no Hornets fans are going to dislike this video because we just trashed them for like 11 minutes. You guys have LaMelo Ball. He's the savior of Charlotte. Hopefully he works out and, can turn your team around a little bit. Because
cool new jerseys too.
Yeah, nice.
Very nice jerseys with the gold.
Yep. Yeah.
Really
And I
fun.
mean, you guys know the reality of the situation, obviously. So sorry, we are the ones that have to highlight it. LaMelo Ball, hero of Charlotte. Thank you very much for listening. Check out our other NBA free agency videos. They're on other teams, OKC, Atlanta, Toronto. This one's on the Hornets. But yeah, thanks for watching. And yeah, take care.
Peace out. Subscribe.